Welcome to AO On Air. This is a podcast from ActiveOps, allowing us to present you topics ranging from operations management, leadership, technology, and new innovations. Check out all our episodes on YouTube channel AOTV or with your favorite podcast platforms such as Apple or Spotify. Now let's begin.
Hello and welcome to AOTV. My name is Michael Cups and we're having another episode of AO On Air, which is a podcast from ActiveOps. I've got two guests today, one in studio and one remote, and it's going to be a good topic. But let's start by introducing you to those two people. Mark, I'd like to welcome you on the podcast, and could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks very much. My name is Mark Alpern, and I've been a contact center practitioner, management consultant, and software developer for over 20 years. As a contact center executive, I've led domestic in-house operations and global business process outsourcers with responsibility for thousands of agents. And for the past 10 years, I've been a management consultant to industry focused on front and back office transformation. And you can appreciate that with such large organizations, they routinely struggle with attrition. And part of my responsibility has been to help them overcome some of the challenges and the risk associated with high agent attrition.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Great to have you on this episode. And Santosh, people may remember you from a previous podcast, but go ahead and give a quick introduction.
Well, it's good to be back here in Dallas again, and good to be back in the studio again with you, Michael, and take the chair with Mark. So while we get back on AO on Air, I know I've introduced myself in the past. So my name is Santosh, and I head operations for ActiveOps in North America. I've lived and breathed operations throughout my life. Coincidentally, yesterday I finished 13 years in ActiveOps, and I begin my 14th today.
Wow. Today?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. So yesterday was the first time I set foot into ActiveOps, could say 14 years ago. Our team is responsible for implementing the applications that we take to our customers. So we implement the goodness, which is the implementation services and delivery team. And then after we've done that, our team is also responsible for relationship management and customer success.
Excellent. Well, great to see you again. Great to have you here in Dallas with us. So today's topic to the audience is about attrition, which is it's a fascinating topic because it accelerated after the pandemic. And when we talk about these workforce groups that Mark mentioned or Santosh mentioned, is that they have to deal with it, whether it's to minimize attrition, or if it does happen, how to deal with that, whether you're doing more with less while you train more resources, et cetera. So Santosh, I wanted to start with you. I mean, there's a lot of trends out there. We've heard the Great Resignation, the Great Reshuffle, the Great whatever, and I was wondering if you had some statistics or stats about what's going on in the workforce.
Yep. So we call it the Great Resignation. I think it's since transition, and I've read about it being now called the Great Reshuffle, the Great Attrition, and I think more recently the Great Reevaluation. Yep. But simply put, I think people are more keener than ever to look elsewhere. They're looking elsewhere for flexibility, a better work culture, their own well-being, and of course, there's the element of pay and pay rise and all of that stuff. Now, the Great Resignation is barely over, and then this trend of quiet quitting sort of started to seep its way in. And then you've, of course, got all the layoffs that we've heard about in the news. Yeah. So everything said and done, people are leaving the workplace. Now, there was an early prediction that the US employee voluntary turnover for 2022 will be around 20%.
Wow.
Now, if you look at it from a pre-pandemic average of about 31.9 million employees, I think quitting their jobs, 37.4 million actually quit their jobs. So it's a lot higher. Now, with a minimum of about 5.43% and a maximum of about 16+%, I think the employee turnover rate across all industries for 2022 sort of averaged about 9.31%, according to this website called Procedure.com. Now, let's look at two people-intensive sectors. Yeah. And my first one is banking and insurance. It employs, just in the US, about 6 million people. And the year 2022 was, in fact, a true Great Resignation for them. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I think the turnover rate for them was 26.3%.
Oh, wow.
Now, within the healthcare, my next people-intensive industry is, of course, the healthcare industry. They had an estimated loss of about 20% of their workforce.
Goodness, yeah.
Now, that's a big number. That means nearly about 1.7 million people have quit healthcare jobs as per the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, that's the numbers of quitting. Now, in terms of hiring, now, most of the time, the pace of hiring pretty much mirrors the pace of people leaving. Now, and that on average is about 3 times. Now, that creates significant pressure on operations. It's efficiencies, it's productivity, it's training time, it's cost. So there's a ton out there.
Yeah.
Now, the overall cost of apparently voluntary employee turnover was $1 trillion in 2022. In fact, an industry expert estimates that it costs up to 1.5 to 2x to sort of replace that a position. So based on insights from Predictive Insights, I was doing some reading. I think the cost of a single resignation is approximately $11,372.
Approximately.
Yeah, approximately $11,370. Well, fairly precise. But if you apply that math to the banking industry, or the banking and finance industry, and say 6 million people, 20% turnover, that's in excess of 12 billion.
That's amazing.
As just $12 billion US just as turnover costs.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's just incredible. So, Mark, let's go to you now. With your background in call centers and just operations management, you've dealt with a lot of managers and directors kind of dealing with that workforce challenges, but in attrition being one of them, and one of them I just had a conversation about healthcare. You mentioned U.S. healthcare, Santosh, is the aging population, right? They're starting to retire as well. So there's a lot of reasons for attrition, Mark, but how do managers and directors prepare for it? Because you don't always know when it's coming, and it may come in buckets, or it may come in 1 or 2 individuals. So what's your best practices there?
Well, I got to say that attrition is a huge issue. It puts a huge strain on service delivery within an organization for both the front line as well as the support staff that manage them. For workforce teams, they struggle to update the agent work schedules and readjust skill sets in a timely manner. This on top of dealing with their regular day-to-day abundance of absenteeism adjustments and what have you, which significantly increases their workload and doesn't allow them to be proactive in other aspects of their responsibility. One of the big things looking at the team members, such as the agents, you've got this whole, what I refer to as the domino effect of attrition. As people start to leave, others question, why are they leaving? And what is wrong with the organization? And there's a whole host of institutional knowledge and experience that's lost. And it takes a long time to recover when you consider the fact that the average new hire learning curve is 6 months to a year, depending on the role and the complexity of the job. It takes a long time to recover. And as Santosh mentioned, it's very expensive to hire and retrain individuals.
Yeah. And so the managers and directors are on the front line, but some of them are resigning and moving on too. But so I'll throw this question to both of you. Maybe Mark, you can start us off here. But are there behaviors that managers and directors can see in their staff? What are the things they're looking for that when they're experiencing turnover? Are there trends that they can kind of watch and follow, and to get in a position of defense or prevent that?
Yeah, I think there's a number of key performance indicators, if you will, that they could and should be looking at. Increases in absenteeism is definitely an indicator that there's an issue. It could be because of high occupancy. That is, the agents are on the phone talking to customers or doing their work for the large part of an hour, and you would think ordinarily that's the nature of their job. But there's a lot of industry studies that suggest that anything more than 90% occupancy for any type of front or back office agent is problematic and can lead to burnout. If there's changes in service quality results, if there's a decrease in productivity, if there's changes in scheduled adherence and conformance, these are all indicators that there's something wrong. And, more pragmatically, if you look at employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction scores, any decrease in those or any changes in those can definitely be an indicator of what's to come. To my way of thinking, EX is equal to CX. That is, any changes in employee satisfaction can generally lead to changes in customer satisfaction as well.
Yeah. How about you, Santosh? Anything you want to add there?
Well, for my early days working in the BPO industry, the one thing that we miserably failed at was preempting attrition. And it was always way off the mark. Now, looking back, I think it's because we so much focused on the formula, on getting the math right, that we completely chose to ignore the symptoms that we were pretty much seeing in people day in and day out.
Yeah.
So, and much later we started calling them early warning signals, and we'd have so many projects to actually, I don't know, there were Six Sigma projects to to control attrition or to preempt attrition. Now, in my opinion, I think and I'll add to what Mark just said, in my opinion, I think an operation leader needs to use a combination of two things. So visible behavioral changes, and then combine that with what he's probably seeing on data. So a combination of that is, so highly engaged employees are 75% less likely to quit. Now, how could you come with that? Is I think visible signs of low engagement can be lesser involvement in company activities. To Mark's point, higher absenteeism, showing up lesser for training and coaching opportunities. You could also look at, we've got a workforce intelligence software. One of the things that it does, it looks for staggered work days in people's working patterns. Now, that could indicate employee burnout.
Yeah.
Now, within the healthcare industry, I think a survey was done of about 1,000 healthcare professionals. 28% said, I'm quitting because of burnout. Look at the finance and the insurance industry. Previously, in 2021, they had the highest market share of engaged employees. I think 94%. That number dropped by 8% more recently. So look for visible behavior changes. Once you've seen that, before you take action, use a tool. You've got applications within your business that you use. So look for, to Mark's point, schedule adherence changes. Look for rather than drop in productivity, look for varying productivity levels. Peaks and troughs signify that person's probably not focused. It could be reflective of work type too. Higher errors, drop in quality scores, longer turnaround times or missing deadlines, digital distraction, could all be signs of employee burnout. But just don't go by that. Look for behavioral changes, use them in combination. I'll just throw out a statistic out there. This is to sort of support Mark's conversation. Apparently, within new employees, I think 1/3 of new employees quit within 6 months.
Wow.
So you've got to look after those new employees. You've spent a lot of money bringing them on board. You probably invested in some early days of training, but look after those employees.
That's good advice. So Mark, let's talk. We've talked about the bad end of attrition and the impact it has on organizations, cost wise, training wise, stress wise, et cetera. But Mark, what would you say? Let's get proactive here. So what can managers do and proactively do to limit attrition?
Well, I think there's several things that they can do. And Santosh talked about being preemptive and the fact that, good 30% or more employees quit within 6 months of taking their job. So that really, to me, points to the whole hiring process. And isn't there an opportunity to hire better, hire for fit and mindset, not just for skills? It's a really tight labor market, and it's getting increasingly difficult to get the right people with the right skill sets. And in some locations where you have a number of people-intensive jobs, such as contact centers, it becomes a fierce battle to get the right resources. So when we talk about hire and fit, we're talking about being customer-centric, the ability to handle stress, work as a team. And it's incumbent on management to also understand the different needs of different demographics of who they're hiring, the baby boomers versus the millennials, right? There's a strong desire for, and necessarily so for work-life balance, for perhaps part-time and flexible shifts as opposed to fixed full-time shifts. Certainly there's a desire for work from home and what have you. So these are the types of things that organizations need to think about.
Yeah.
As well, being proactive means thinking of that, not ignoring that attrition is going to happen, and taking the philosophy of hiring ahead of attrition, for example. So it doesn't solve the problem of attrition, but at least it allows you to limit the impact that attrition would have on service delivery if you are in fact hiring in advance and training people up such that they're ready to take the place of employees who are exiting.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Thank you for that, Mark. Santosh, recently you told me about a customer that, and the end result is what caught my attention, but the path to there was interesting. You said that they're using transparency as kind of the mechanism to lower attrition. So could you share a little more about that?
Yep. And it's actually a very good story. And it goes back to the industries I just made reference to. So, and not just transparency. I think it's also about, employee engagement, well-being, transparency. At the end of the day, it's got to have its impact on business outcomes. So it's a combination of many things that deliver the right result. It's also a great example of, on your previous question, Michael, I spoke about the combination of visible employee, so listening to the employee, combining that with, visible behavior changes, and then looking at a tool. So it's another great story. So this is, so one of our senior leaders works in the healthcare industry. He believes firmly that deploying Work IQ, which is our workforce intelligence tool, essentially helped him and his leaders first listen to their employees, second take cognizance of it, look at the data, and then have the right conversations with people. Essentially, they were all looking at the same metrics, and I think looking at the same metrics, looking at the same tool, meant that they were driving towards the transparency point. Now, he's been a long-term user of Work IQ, and he believes that, and he says this very proudly, that he's got the lowest attrition in the entire organization. That's a strong statement, but it's also a statement that I think he stands by. And that comes from the fact that the tool that they deployed is being used commonly across the board. So firstly, there was a standardization of language. As in, when I say language, I mean when you're talking metrics, when you're talking about, where have I spent my time, which application, have I logged out early, have I logged out late? They're all looking and singing from the same hymn sheet. That drives confidence because, I don't have to be worried that when I'm going for my monthly one-on-one, that there's going to be a new set of metrics. No, It's the same metrics I know and I work with on a day-to-day basis. Now, so apart from the successes within his area, now this is the story. They have a complaints process within their resolutions team. Like any other complaints process, it's demanding. It's high pressure. There could be penalties, there could be losses, but it also requires a special skill set. That essentially means the people who are going to come in at a certain price. So they're more expensive than normal stuff.
Right.
And they noticed that because of that environment out there, there was significant attrition, especially in the first 6 months. So they were ramping up people, training them, getting them up to speed, but in less than 6 months, there were people leaving. He suggested to this business leader to deploy Work IQ, and they did. And immediately there was a marked change. There was a feeling of empowerment because everyone was looking at the same metrics. They were looking at the same measurements, but then they were then using those metrics and measurements within their day-to-day conversations. But team leaders got also more sensitive to the fact that because it's a high-pressure environment, they were keeping their eyes open for people who were logging in late, working excess hours, but then going back and saying, why do you have to do that? Is there a way we can work around this? Do I need to take something off your plate? But they were all, essentially talking, and in due course of time, better conversations, transparency of data led to better conversations led to better outcomes. Better outcomes meant people they just felt that they were being looked after. So big tick in the box for employee well-being and engagement, but it's driven from the fact of using, from better conversations coming from right metrics, and sort of preempting behaviors. And then going back and having those good conversations with people. So it's a great story.
Yeah, it's a great story. And Mark, to turn it back to you, so That's a story about the evolution of how they drove culture, same language. This is something that you've played out over many customers, I think, and you do a planning software that you also offer your customers in the call centers or the front office. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? How companies can take charge where the employees don't feel that much stress because they feel like the organization's in control?
So I think it's really important for organizations to take the well-being of their employees seriously. They do things or should be doing things like having skills development programs, giving them opportunities to develop new skills and technologies, keep the job interesting and challenging. And I think one of the challenges that we face in the front office in particular, and likely in the back office, is the whole notion of micromanagement. There's so much data available that it can seem that employees are being micromanaged when in fact it should be positioned as the ability or the opportunity to see how you're performing and where the opportunities to improve lie. The other area would be around career development planning and opportunities for promotion, career progression opportunities. There's no question that the front office and back office are often seen as stepping stone roles, and it should be positioned in a way that the contact center is a great opportunity to develop some really good customer-oriented skills, consultative skills, communication skills, and what have you, that will serve them well for other responsibilities within the organization.
Yeah. And that helps them feel like, Santosh, you mentioned something about the common metrics, I think you said, or I think that's an interesting thing for all of us. And I think Mark kind of implied that as well. If you know what you're signing up for, then you can go deliver comfortably, right? But do you have anything else to add to what Mark?
Yeah, I mean, to add to what Mark, I think we're all amazed. I call this a corporate paradox. We spend so much of money in hiring and recruitment.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you spend half as much on retaining people, I think we'll do a much better job. And I firmly believe that retention and commitment, which essentially will then reduce attrition, has got to do a lot with company culture. And open conversations, continuous feedback, employee recognition, Mark's point of mobility, which is, I've been doing this for X amount of time. Can I progress? Can I try something else? I think they all just make workplace more human. And because you make it more human, there's an emotional connection to the work I do, to my team, to my organization. And that's what people are about emotions. We've got to build that emotional connect. There's many ways you can do it. And the companies that do it really well strengthen employees' ties along with the organization. I mean, I'll go back to the same thing again. I think transparency drives trust. So always be transparent with employees. You keep your communications going. We hear so many organizations restarting, all these initiatives of automation and process excellence that they paused or slowed down. If you're adopting a new tool, a new change, a new transformation, keep the person in the center of that change. Keep the employee, and change becomes so much more easy. Tools. Invest in tools that are simple, that drive decision making more better. Yeah. That make people feel empowered. If people feel empowered, then they understand the metrics. Keep the metrics simple. Yeah. Let there be like 3 or 4 of them that sort of speak to what a person is doing on a day-to-day basis. And I'm a big fan of engagement, coaching, and feedback. As long as that's a continuous process, and you're using good data to support that, your conversations will be healthy. Now, I think about 35% of the global workforce say that they really feel engaged. That's a very low number with all the great things that we're doing. Coaching means people are being heard for, cared for, looked after. Yeah. Development and mobility. People want to be developed. They're saying, give me more skills. Yeah. So invest in cross-training initiatives. Tell them what's the art of the possible. Invest not just in a primary skill. Give people a secondary skill. Give them a tertiary skill. And then I think A very important point is inclusion, Michael, which has a direct correlation. Now, I think over 3/4 of the staff say, they all say they want an inclusive work environment. So coaching can help every person, including those from sort of underrepresented groups, feel safe, feel empowered, feel included. And that changes the perspective of how you work in an organization. And I think essentially builds to the fact that strong emotional ties to a team, to an organization, will essentially help you bring down your attrition levels.
Yeah. I think there's two things about both what Mark said and what you just said, Santosh, that hit me. Is one is that we're not. Most of us aren't driven by just pick up your lunch pail and go to work. We want to contribute. We want to feel like we're making a difference, whatever that difference may be, even if it's making somebody next to you happier, right? Making them smile or what have you. And then secondly, you both mentioned kind of training things, and I can't count the number because I've been in the software business for too long, maybe 30 something years. How many times we get sent to a training and then there's nobody reinforcing it when we get back into the workplace. Mm-hmm. And so that engagement that you both mentioned is absolutely valuable. So Mark, as we almost wrap up here, I'm just wondering, do you have any other risk rewards that you would tell executives from some of your customers or future customers?
Risk rewards. Oh, goodness. I'm thrown.
Okay, we'll start with Santosh and get back to you then.
Sorry.
Well, so I think in terms of risks, we're going through let me put it this way. I think we all use the word hybrid. And hybrid work. For me, and it's a personal opinion, you can hold me to it, Michael, I think the use of the word hybrid is, I still don't know what I'm doing in an organization. So we're still going through those elements of how are we going to make it work? Do we want our people back in the office? In those industry statistics, there's one thing. There's a big group of people who've actually left the workforce forever. They're never going to come back. The millennials have a completely different way of looking at work. Right? You can make mandates. You got to be very, very careful when you do that. People are no more excited by free pizza on a Monday afternoon. Right? There needs to be a sense of purpose. So when you come up with your plan to support whatever this new world is going to look like, let's call it for now hybrid. Keep the person and ask people what they want to do. So for me, that is because I'm still looking for good proofs of what hybrid really is. And I think as organizations, as businesses, we run one to ourselves. We've got to be sensitive to that fact. So that for me is the biggest risk. And I think the risk is because we've never been through a pandemic. We've never come out of one after so many years. And we're still trying. And when I say trying, I think we're throwing darts in the dark. So we got to be careful. And I think a good way to get out of that risk is to involve people. Is to invest in tools, irrespective of where they are. There's better accountability in terms of the invest in tools. Of course, you got to invest in training and coaching and stuff. That for me is the risk. I think reward I'll summarize with one line. No person comes to work to do a bad job. We've got to believe and trust that our people are here to do an outstanding job. Mark's point about EX equals CX will be relevant irrespective of the type of generation. When I say generation, I mean the workforce generation. So we've got to accept that fact. And that is rewarding in itself. To look at my workforce and go, wow, you guys are here to make a big difference and make this business a great one. So that's my risk and reward story.
That's awesome. And Mark, coming back to you, anything you want to add to that or mention in yourself? And then I also have a follow-on question to that is, if somebody wanted to pick up a conversation with you, where would they find you?
So let me just answer the first question. And that is, I wrote an article with a colleague of mine not too long ago about the hard and hidden costs of agent attrition. And we found that it was around $25,000 over and above a salary in cost to hire an employee. So about 1.5 times an agent's salary to onboard somebody new, only to have them attrit not too long after, which is just phenomenal when you think about the implications of that. And so the benefit of being proactive and preemptive in your attrition approach just makes good business sense. And to Santosh's point, if you were to focus half as much on retaining employees as you spend essentially on post-attrition hiring, then I think we would all be in a much better position from an employee perspective, a client perspective, from a profitability perspective.
Yeah, it's great. And so to that point, where can somebody pick up a conversation with you, Mark, and maybe even find that paper that you mentioned?
Sure, by all means, connect with me on LinkedIn at Mark Alpern, or you can call me at 647-283-7373.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mark, so much. And you don't want to mention Cinareo?
Well, I'd love to mention Cinareo.
Yeah, please do. Yes.
So I am the co-founder of Cinareo. Cinareo is a SaaS-based strategic capacity planning application, which I designed to help contact center management develop resource plans and operating budgets for front office agents and support staff. It really is a decision-making tool that is starting to take the market by storm, and it's a complement to other good products on the market, such as ActiveOps.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, very good. It's great to see you today. Santosh, how would somebody pick up and find you?
Come to ActiveOps. You'll find me here. Easiest way to get in touch with me is on LinkedIn. And if you wanted to send me an email, then my email ID is santosh.joy@activeops.com.
And then if those fail, just call United Airlines. It sounds like you're somewhere between cities.
Well, yeah, a lounge, a plane, or a hotel. Well, or a customer site.
There you go. Anyway. Excellent. Well, thank you both, Santosh and Mark. Thanks so much. Very insightful, very important topic, and it's something that's in the news, but more importantly, it's on employees' minds, and so consequently, our managers and directors need to help in getting their employees taken care of in a way that is constructive for the company. So, thank you all for joining us on AO on Air. Very, very happy to talk about this topic and more. If you want to catch up with us on ActiveOps.com, you can find a resource hub, and you can connect with us, and we'll pick up the conversation with you directly. You can also find more AO on Air episodes on our YouTube channel called AOTV, or you can find them on your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much. Have a great day.